of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Douglas Rushkoff, professor of media studies at Queens College, author of Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. Also on the program today, Trump announces he will, in fact, show up for his arraignment tomorrow in New York City. New report, DOJ has more evidence of possible Trump obstruction in his stolen documents case. Meanwhile, that Chinese balloon supposedly gathered intel on U.S. military sites.
Okay.
Polls show a majority of Americans think Trump should be indicted. But Trump has opened a huge lead on Tiny D. Judge rules that Dominion's defamation trial against Fox News will go forward.
Wonderful.
And we are one day out from really important races, both in the Chicago mayor's race and in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. If you live in either one of those two areas, vote tomorrow. Ron DeSantis does a closed-door signing of permitless carry bill in Florida. Congratulations, Florida. Sunshine State. California to require half of all heavy trucks to be electric by 2035. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us at the beginning of the week. Emma Vigeland here.
Hello. It is Fun Day Monday.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Forgot what day it was.
Tomorrow's going to be Fun Day Tuesday, too, I would say.
Oh, my goodness.
It's going to be real insane.
What do you think he has prepared?
I think he's just going to, it's going to be a lot of waving, a lot of smiling, a lot of like the same sort of Alvin Bragg is a horrible person. The judge is a horrible person. All you people are horrible people. New York City loves me, despite the fact that here's my prediction. There's not going to be a lot of pro-Trump protesters.
No.
I mean, I think there could be like 20.
Right, like it's funny that it seems like the disparity between security and actual turnout is going to be wild. Like, I think Midtown Manhattan is going to be like Fort Knox essentially for like 20 protesters.
Well, honestly,
well, they're going to pretend like, oh, the reason why no protesters showed up because they were afraid of the police presence.
If they were smart, they'd hire some crisis actors for the situation.
I've told them all to stay home.
Yeah.
That's why they didn't show up. They listened to me.
They left me.
Here is Trump's attorney, Jim Trusty.
I mean, it's in the name, buddy.
On Fox's Shannon Bream's show yesterday. And Trump has been going off on Truth Social, I guess, about the judge in his Manhattan case. Do you remember like when one of the first cases that was like overturned, I think, with some of his immigration policies, and he said, we can't trust it because the judge is Mexican.
Yes.
Or Mexican descent or whatever it was.
He's biased.
He's
unlike
back
the white
to this.
judges, they have no bias.
I mean, I think the theory about this is to get into the judge's mind, right? Because then the judge is like, am I doing this because I really resent Trump, or am I doing this because this is the case? I mean, I imagine it's not ultimately going to impact the judge, but I could see why Trump would think that it might. Here is Jim Trusty.
Free to do.
President has had quite a bit to say, including this post from Friday. I'll read in part talking about the judge overseeing this case. He says, the judge assigned to my witch hunt case, a case that has never been charged before, hates me. A lot of that's in all caps. He goes on to say, that's the same person who railroaded my 75-year-old former CFO, Alan Weisselberg, to take a plea deal. He strong-armed Alan, which a judge is not allowed to do, and treated my companies, which didn't plead, viciously appealing. So a couple things to break down there. First of all, I'm an attorney. If
Pause it. Let's just start with like viciously appealing. What does that mean? That's what I wish they start with. Like, what does that mean? Like, is he really trying to say appalling?
That's what I was curious about. Is it appalling, or is he saying he's going to appeal the decision, but it hasn't even happened yet?
No. Okay. Yeah. I mean, preemptive appeal, like a preemptive pardon.
I never saw his avatar for on his Truth Social.
It's so over the top.
My God. He's also doing now mime, too, is my understanding. I forgot.
Judge is not allowed to do, and treated my companies, which didn't plead, viciously appealing. So a couple things to break down there. First of all, I'm an attorney. If my client posted that and was facing that judge, wouldn't make my job any easier. Does it worry you?
Well, look, the president's a big believer in free speech, as you know. He's got strong opinions. I think he's very frustrated for some of his very loyal employees being caught up in the machinery of a persecution. And so he feels strongly about it.
Oh, well, I'm sure that will help with the judge.
Yeah. I mean, do we know what Alan Weisselberg said about Trump? Do we know that when he took a plea deal that he did not reveal any information to prosecutors? Maybe Mr. Trusty here might be changing his tune once he hears what Weisselberg had to sing in his song. That's just a guess.
I'm against free speech in that situation.
Also, gotta say...
Stop talking, Alan.
I know. Alan, gag order. Why do all of Trump's attorneys... I saw another one of his attorneys on a talk show on Sunday. They all look like mob guys.
Well, I'll tell you something. I know some defense attorneys in some very big defense firms. And apparently the Trump people went out to all of them. And
I don't doubt
there was only a limited amount left. And I don't know, but it doesn't seem uncommon to characterize the lawyers in that way.
Maybe that's
so
how...
Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Roy Cohn connection. Anyway.
Speaking of Roy Cohn, here is Bill Barr, former AG, on whether what he would do if President Trump was his client in terms of putting him on the stand to testify.
I'll ask you what I asked Jim Trusty as well. If the president was your client, would you put him on the stand? Because I got to imagine in any of these cases, if it gets to trial, he's going to want to defend himself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not his lawyer. Generally, I think it's a bad idea to go on the stand, and I think it's particularly a bad idea for Trump because he lacks all self-control, and it'd be very difficult to prepare him and keep him testifying in a prudent fashion.
Okay, let me ask you about this back and forth.
I wonder if he's laughing, thinking about how often he defended all the horrible stuff that he did.
He literally said, "I would vote for him in 2024 if he's the nominee."
Of course,
thank you, Bill Barr.
Of course you would.
I'm not Trump's personal attorney anymore.
I'm not Trump's personal attorney, although when I was just vying for the job of AG, I wrote a 6-page memo on why he shouldn't be subject to any type of legal implications. We're going to take a break in just a moment. Douglas Rushkoff is going to join us. He's professor of media studies at Queens College, author of Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires, which has, I mean, we're all just waiting around for Twitter to fall apart right now. And apparently the only person who's lost their blue check is not even a person. It's just the New York Times.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll ask Rushkoff about this because I'm sure he has some thoughts about this, but I'm just sort of, it's just amazing. When I did that PBD podcast, they asked me about Elon Musk, and you got to appreciate the new things he's come in and done on Twitter. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
I mean, we appreciate it from a content perspective, but
there's no new products he's rolling out. He's just showing that he fundamentally doesn't understand how people use Twitter or why. Like the idea that like everybody's going to get a badge, that's not the point. The point is to know that who it is that you're talking to. But whatever, we'll talk to Rushkoff about that. Hey, folks, we've got a couple of sponsors. First one is, it's about security. It's also about being able to do what you want on your own devices and not necessarily be constrained by where you live, if you know what I mean. I also have to say that it is sort of shocking in 2023 that every parent hasn't installed ExpressVPN on their kids' devices, because this is basically like, letting a kid walk home from school and saying, I'll get around to talk to you about what you should be doing with strangers. The amount of sort of like ability of these hackers and scammers to get all your stuff is pretty nuts. Every device, as you know, has a unique IP address. This reveals personal information about you, like, for instance, where you live. It is super easy for a stranger online to find your IP address. If you've ever clicked on a sketchy link or opened an email that had a virusy image, your IP address could be exposed. ExpressVPN is an app that hides your real IP address, replaces it with a dummy one, keeps you safe and private. You can choose which server you want. I'm going to come out of California or whatever it is. You can also choose what country you're working through. Doesn't matter. You might want to, I don't know, watch a program on Netflix that's not available in the U.S. Let's say it's Britain. Well, how would you do that? You would use ExpressVPN to suggest to those people that you're in Britain, because that's what it does. It hides your IP address, allows you to choose to some degree, what your IP address is going to be, at least where it's originating from.
Some sports games out of market?
That I am curious about.
This would have helped me in
thinking
college.
about that.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, you can secure your family's online activity and unlock tons of new shows by visiting expressvpn.com/majority. Use my link to get a 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/majority. expressvpn.com/majority to learn more. Also, as many of you know, I have a bit of a green thumb. Well, no, not really. I have a thumb.
Okay.
And I attempt it to be green. So last year, a buddy of mine gave me some seeds to plant in like a garden type of thing. And they were cannabis seeds. And I raised them from little tiny seedlings. And then I put them into a garden sort of bed. And these things grow. They grew like weeds, like literally like weeds. I mean, 8-9 feet tall. And I'm looking at this stuff and I'm going like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all this? And fortunately or unfortunately, I never had to address that question because I didn't know that you had to sext the cannabis plants. Mm-hmm. Some are male and some are female. Now, it's illegal to grow in New York State, and it's illegal to grow in many states around the country, but check your local laws. You're allowed to have a certain amount in 6 plants in New York State. I don't know what it is in other places. But what happened is all of it turned to seeds. And now my buddy was like, you should just sell these because they're great. Outdoor growing seeds. Cedar seeds is what we call it. Cedar seeds.
Yeah. I mean,
we have the full spread of strains, indica, sativa, hybrids. All the details are on the site. All units are sold in a pack of 6. So you get 6 seeds. We accept all major credit cards and debit cards. If you enter, everybody on the Majority Report is going to get 15% off automatically. But if you enter SEEDS, SEEDS, you'll get free shipping. So check it out. We are live now.
I'm checking it out.
Seeds.com. Check it out. You can read about these different strains, and they've all grown outside.
Everyone check out the website. Some fun graphics for the different seeds here. My favorite's Tank Engine.
There you go.
That's my favorite.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Douglas Rushkoff. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It's a real pleasure to welcome to the program Douglas Rushkoff, professor of media studies at Queens College, author of, well, his latest, Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. Douglas, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
The story of which you write in the book, you open the book with this, of what I suspect was sort of the genesis of your idea to write this book, is pretty nuts. Will you just walk us through? I'm sure you've told the story 100 times, but it really is fascinating.
Well, it's funny. How about I tell you the real story? I don't tell the other people.
Yes, please.
So yeah, I get invited to do these talks for wealthy tech people all the time, and I kind of feel like I'm an intellectual dominatrix. You know, why would these libertarian dudes invite some kind of quasi-Marxist, anarcho-syndicalist, lefty, radical, psychedelic person to speak at their things? Usually it's to yell at them, right? What have you done to the internet? Why are you extracting value from all these communities? Why are you destroying the planet? You know, I give those kind of talks to these guys. And then I guess it's sort of like almost like a mini Burning Man adventure for them, right? They feel guilty for half an hour and then go back and do what they do anyway. So I was ready to do one of these talks, right? I'm flown out to the middle of the desert to this crazy resort where everybody has like their own hot tubs in their rooms. It was nuts. But, you know, it wasn't really a talk. It turns out it was this hedge fund that invited like its 100 most wealthy investors to this weekend. And what they do is they hire a bunch of like semi-celebrities, like a celebrity chef and like a golf pro and like a tantric sex healer. And then these guys have a menu of different events that they go to. Like, you want to improve your golf swing, you want to learn how to make a lemon meringue, you know, with this, famous food TV chef, or do you want to spend an hour talking about the future of technology with Douglas Rushkoff? So 5 of these guys show up, right? I'm ready to go on a stage, right? To get mic'd up and go. And instead, these 5 dudes come into what's turns out, I thought it was my green room, but it was the room, right? And they start asking me all these tech bro questions like, you know, do we invest in, you know, Bitcoin or Ethereum? You know, what do you think's going to take over? Virtual reality or augmented reality? You know, when is Web 3 going to be replaced by Web 4? You know, and I'm so not the person to ask those things. Like, I know that video is going to be a thing, but I would vote on like Betamax, not VHS, right? Or CompuServe, not AOL, because these things were better, but better never wins. I should learn that. But finally, they got to their big question, which was like Alaska or New Zealand, you know, and they wanted to know where is the best place to put their bunker for the coming event, you know, whether it's climate change, electromagnetic pulse, economic unrest, you know, whatever happens that forces them to live out their fantasies, really, right? And go to their secret bunker. And we spent this whole hour, you know, with me really trying to undermine their basic premise that they could build a retreat and somehow defend it from the germs or from us, you know, and I remember I was like, so who are you going to have guard this thing from us when we have no food? And we're like, oh, don't worry. We've got Navy SEALs, you know, on one touch, you know, on speed dial waiting, but fully gassed helicopters. So then I asked them, I said, well, how are you going to keep control of your Navy SEALs once your money is worthless, right? Your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your dollars, your gold are not going to be worth anything in a post-apocalyptic bunker in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, one of the guys is like opening his Moleskine book, like how to pay for the security guys after my money is worthless. Like, they haven't thought this far. And, you know, and finally I started telling them, look, you know, they were arguing for like shock collars, or that they would be the only one to know the combination on the food. And I'm like, oh, Navy SEALs have no experience getting like combination locks from people. You're going to spend your apocalypse getting waterboarded by your own guys. So finally I was telling them, look, what if you're like really nice to them now? Like, what if you take your head of security and pay for his daughter's bat mitzvah today, you know, or be nice to their families, because it's going to be harder for them to shoot you between the eyes if they know that you were nice to them then. And one of them finally asked me, and this was kind of the perfect thing. One of them asked me, well, yeah, but where does it stop? You know, how many people do you have to be nice to prevent them coming after you? And it's like, well, try being nice to everybody.
But what, like, honestly, to the extent that I have spoken to people like this, there is sort of a quality of like, sort of stuck in, I don't know if it's junior high or sophomore year of college, because like, yeah, I mean, dude, you could have the combination to the food, but are you going to go get the food every time you need food? Like, are you going to, like, how are you going to manage it? There is no, you don't have divine right. People are going to say like, wait a second, there's 5 of us. We got guns. There's just that guy. We could all have significantly more food and we'll just defend ourselves. Like there's no reason why they need that guy anymore.
I know, it's funny. It's like the Zuckerberg, as quoted on Succession, because Zuckerberg's a student, not really, but a student of ancient Rome, because he wants to be Augustus. And one of the lessons he learned about ancient Rome was, there was a proposal to have all the enslaved people wear one kind of uniform. And then the emperor decided against it because he realized if all the enslaved people saw how many they were versus how many citizens, they would have overthrown the government. So it's a bit like that. But these guys, they don't all mean harm. They just, like you say, they kind of got plucked from college when they were freshmen. They had some good idea in their dorm room, and then some VC comes along and says, oh, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, whoever you are, come, do this great thing. And then they transfer parental authority onto some venture capitalist rather than a professor. They leave school when they have like basic programming, but they haven't taken ethics or economics or history or
history.
Anthropology.
Yeah. Well, the history element is what is the thing that I feel connects all of it, right? Because they'll find some philosopher like Augustus and they'll try to model their own like personal brand after it. But what the through line is that it's deeply antisocial, deeply undemocratic and paranoid. And part of me is like, well, is this the new tech billionaire? Is this something new? But it's also just billionaires have been paranoid and trying to wall off the plebeians for not just billionaires, but for the history in the history of capitalism, this paranoia of the masses.
Yeah, and they've generally been able to sort of outpace the masses, right? Like William Randolph Hearst building his castle or moving further west or getting some sort of an island. But I guess never before have the billionaire class believed that they have the ability to destroy the world, right? Their externalized harm doesn't just, enslave a group of people or lead to some social unrest. It actually destroys the whole friggin' planet. So their fantasies are less about just escaping us sort of linearly, but kind of going meta on us altogether, right? They go one level up, like Peter Thiel's book on business is called From Zero to One, where everybody else is down at zero and you level up to one. You exist one order of magnitude above everybody else. Or Ray Kurzweil at Google wants to upload his consciousness, to something else. Or Mark Zuckerberg, we're all here in Web 2. So Mark declares, oh no, I'm leaving Facebook behind and going up to Web 3. So I think you're right that this is it's the age-old fantasy that billionaires have always had of kind of getting away, or, they always used to have these kind of train sets like Gomez Adams of their little world. And now their train set is Mars. Their train set is their billionaire bunker. And they kind of need the excuse of climate change in order to justify the things that they're building. If there weren't this terrible thing, then what are they really doing? Then they're just trying to get away from us because they're antisocial, insane people, which is really deep down what it is.
Too many people watched Red Dawn at an early age, and it influenced them way too much, I think. But the interesting thing, and I want to get into that sort of like relationship between capitalism and tech that you write about, because there is, you do have these people who sort of like got stuck in a pipeline. There's this concept of acquired narcissism for really famous people. And I have to imagine that there's some type of like analog to what happens when you so rapidly accumulate so much money that we see in the context of like this tech world, that we haven't necessarily, I guess there were moments like I struck oil. on my, Beverly Hillbillies, and all of a sudden I'm a millionaire when I wasn't before. But there's a lot more of that seems to happen in this era, and it must completely untether you from society in a way that we haven't really quite seen. Just the pace in which you're untethered just has to have has to make you almost sociopathic on some level.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember way back when in the 80s or 90s, I wrote a piece about how a bunch of movie stars and rock stars were going to Kabbalah, and I felt
I think I might have read that piece. I remember that. I remember all those people doing it. Bernhardt and Madonna and
things. Yeah. But why did they do it? It was partly because they had to somehow. They didn't feel like their sudden fame and wealth was justified because they knew they were just like anybody else. Why was I picked? And you need a rationale. What we're seeing in these billionaires, though, I got some studies in the book that it turns out that billionaires have less of an empathic response than regular people. Like you put a billionaire in an MRI machine and show them a picture of a starving baby, and the parts of their brain that are supposed to light up or that light up for you and me don't for them. They don't experience that same empathy. And I don't believe it's because they were born that way. I believe it's because the decisions that they had to make to become that wealthy involved externalizing so much harm to other people, that they ended up, putting boundaries around their own psyche that only get cracked for a moment, when they take ayahuasca at Burning Man and they have, an hour or two of thinking, now I'm going to save the world with my new software stack, right? I'm going to build a solar panel eco village system. As long as I can, clear out these indigenous people from this forest, I can go build my perfect sustainable, community.
Is that what you call the insulation equation? Is that basically the explanation for that?
Yeah, or part of it. Yeah. The insulation equation is this idea that, we believe, or many of us believe, that we've been using technology to make people's lives easier. But really what we're using it for is to shield ourselves from the labor that's going into it. So, it goes back to, say, Thomas Jefferson and the dumbwaiter, that we were taught in middle school. Oh, the dumbwaiter was so his enslaved servants, wouldn't have to carry the food all the way up the stairs. But if you look at the situation, they were carrying the food like through a mile-long tunnel and up 3 flights of stairs to the very last staircase. You put it in this little, elevator so it could look to Thomas Jefferson and his guests as if the food just arrived auto-magically, like from a Star Trek replicator. But all you were really doing was saving Jefferson and his guests the shame or the indignity of having to see the huffing and puffing servants who are bringing the food. And it's the same with, many modern technologies. Like Amazon has this service called Made for You, where you take an iPhone picture of yourself and it'll have these robots automatically make this perfect t-shirt according to your body and your specifications. And it shows up on your Amazon doorbell on a video, no humans involved, right? But where did the cotton come from? Where did the rare earth metals come from for the robots that made the t-shirt? Yes, there's enslaved children in the Congo, going into caves at gunpoint to get the cobalt, to make these things. So we're not really eliminating labor. We're just pushing labor further and further away from our ability to see it.
We've done that. Slavery exists every time we put on a piece of clothing. That's what we're dealing with on some level. And I think you also write about some chemical that's used to keep on is it on iPhones or sometimes
smartphones in general.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want to see the fingerprints. So the last stage in the production process is they use this extremely toxic chemical to take the fingerprints off the phone. So it looks like there was no human labor involved in manufacturing it. But this toxic chemical actually shortens the lives of the laborers using it. So in order to make it look like there's no people involved, we actually shorten the lives of the humans. And that's the comeuppance. That's the stuff that any tech billionaire is aware of on some level and trying to outrun. And that's really the myth here, that can they earn enough money to escape from the harm they're causing by earning money in that way, right? Can they build enough technology to escape from the externalities of having built technology in that fashion? Which is why, I just saw that letter they wrote, a bunch of these, the AI letter. Have you talked about this one at all? There's this, a thing that a bunch of Elon Musk and a bunch of these guys have signed on to, and some very well-concerned, tech ethicists.
Oh,
even,
yes. I know what you're
about,
talking about.
Let's freeze AI development for 6 months. Let's do a moratorium and just leave it at the level of ChatGPT-4 so we can really get a handle on this.
Right.
And
so we can get ahead and monetize it, and then the free model is made obsolete.
Right. I mean, really, well, it's partly for that, and partly because for these guys, AI is not about helping humanity solve real problems today. They couldn't give a hoot about the fact that these algorithms are already biased against Black people and women and poor people, and it encourages the incarceral state and increased poverty, and just awful. So they don't want to look at the present problem. What they're concerned about is getting off the planet. Right. They're concerned about the next phase of humanity that they want to take part in, the man-machine augmented post-human, reality that these guys talk about. They call it effective altruism. The people on Earth now don't matter. We're just the larval stage in the evolution of the species. It's the ones that get wings, right? The ones that get their AI robot cyborg wings and can leave the planet and go to Mars as pure digital consciousness. Those are the ones that they're thinking about. And those are the ones they're afraid. They want to make sure that just as these guys, these dudes have gone meta on us, they know that AI can go meta on them, right? That's their fear.
So it's really on some level like a projection that AI is going to do to them what they are either doing or trying to do to the rest of us.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And again, it's because they just don't grasp history. It's funny. I was just thinking the other day, I don't know if it's accurate to say, but I feel like Marxists use historical examples, and these kind of proto-fascists, they use metaphor, right? It's
right. It's all theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be, because it doesn't work a lot of times in real world.
In the ground. It doesn't work on the ground. So it's theory. So it's always meta, right? You look at capitalism. What is capitalism? It's meta. It's the financialization of there's real people with real needs, and we figure out how can we go one level above that and own the banking system, or buy derivatives on banking, or buy derivatives of the derivatives of the derivatives of the banking system, right? The financial world is like 1 or 2 or 5 levels removed from reality. Digital is the same way. Right? Digital is not real. Digital is a symbol system. So that's why those two things have dovetailed so perfectly into this new sort of digitally, steroidally accelerated form of capitalism. That's what we have to look out for. That's why they want to go to a virtual world. What is this Web3, metaverse that Zuckerberg's talking about? It's the blockchain and virtual reality, right? It's not here. It's not on the ground, but there's still real people here, right? And that's what I keep trying to bring us back to, is the real conditions on the ground that they're trying to ignore, or that they feel are so bad that climate change and the death of our species is so inevitable to these guys that they literally do want to get to Mars, or get to the the server in the sky and exist as something else.
And the thing is, it's just them. They want to get them there. It's not like they want to get us there, right?
No, exactly. That's why they're bunkers. They hold 40 people, right? Them, their wives, their kids, and then 30 teenage girls for them to impregnate with their seed forever. The sort of a Jeffrey Epstein style dormitory.
Well, that's actually a very real thing. And this is a bit of an aside, but I am curious about that kind of natalist strain as well within some of these billionaires, including Elon Musk. I mean, since you're an expert on these ghouls, I mean, what do you make of that and how that connects into their larger world philosophy?
Well, it's weird. I mean, for me, I came around it sort of through the other side. Where I witnessed it was I was at a party at my soon-to-be agent's house with a bunch of scientists, and I got in this big argument with Richard Dawkins, who was making fun of me for believing that there was, I hate to even use the word because people laugh at me, but that there's something like a soul that human beings have a soul, that we have some innate reason for being here, that there's something going on here that maybe materialist science doesn't completely explain. And as someone who studied philosophy, I know, read your Wittgenstein. There's systems of meaning that we use as communities to understand the world, and staunch materialism is one of them, but it doesn't explain a whole lot of stuff. It's an underlying assumption. And he teased me and eventually said, with his friends, the other kind of atheist they're not scientists, they're believers in scientism. They said, "Oh, Rushkoff, you're a moralist." Right. And then, 20 years later, cut to the future, right? I see them on the friggin' Jeffrey Epstein's plane going to the TED conference and realize, oh, there's a reason why Jeffrey Epstein really was drawn to these, harsh atheist geneticists kinds of scientists who say, nothing going on here. There's just these creatures, basically, monkeys with genes that are controlling them, that we respond to memes. We're not even conscious, right? Consciousness is an illusion perpetrated by your DNA. If there's nothing happening here, but you and your genes, you and your code, basically, then the object of the game is to spread your code. So of course, it's really a form of eugenesis, right?
Just in reverse.
You are your code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about like sort of there's some, it sounds like in your book, it feels like there's a little bit of like disillusionment with where, the original sort of vision of the internet to where it has become, because I remember that era I guess I didn't even realize it at that time too, like the distinction between sort of yippies who were libertarian leaning and yippies who were communitarian. Like I just wasn't aware of that distinction. And over the years, I've seen it in different, very weird places, that distinction. But it was this sort of like hippie libertarian sort of ethos that what happened? Well, tell people who don't remember, like what that ethos was and then sort of what happened to it.
Yeah, it is weird. The ethos was the same as the ethos that you have in college in the 1980s, dropping acid or doing mushrooms for the first time. And you think that, oh, we just have to give the president some of this and the whole world will be fine, right? Everyone will see what I did, right? Before we realized, what Timothy Leary famously said, that, your psychedelic experience is characterized by your set and setting. What is the mindset you have when you take it? And what's the setting in which you do it? So the set and setting of the early internet was the weird counterculture San Francisco psychedelic community. The people who I knew who went, I was an East Coaster, but the people who went out to California to program computers were like Grateful Dead heads. These were crazy. And I thought, oh my gosh. And the original culture of it was very hallucinatory. It was like, we can redesign reality to our own specifications. This is going to be the great kind of hippie dream of rebuilding civilization from the bottom up as a happy, wonderful shareware universe. No one wanted to make money. If your parents found out you were going into computers in the 80s, they thought you were like going to go be a professional player of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Yeah. They mourned for you. They didn't realize. And really what happened was, two things. One was, one of us, it turned out, Grateful Dead lyricist John Barlow was, it turns out he was also a libertarian of the hippie kind. And he wrote this document called the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace. And he wrote it at a very particular moment when most of us involved in computers were really angry at government. They were arresting young hackers, like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, because they didn't understand what the little hackers were doing, and companies were afraid of getting hacked. We had Tipper Gore and the Decency Act, and she was concerned for kids to be playing violent video games. And so government looked like the bad guys. And Barlow came along and said, governments of the world, get off the net. We're here. We're going to take this up. We don't need you. What we didn't realize as little psychedelic hippie raver kids, at the time, was you get rid of government, you create a free reign for corporations.
Right.
That government and corporations kind of balance each other out like bacteria and fungus do in the body, right? You get rid of the bacteria and the fungus go wild. So we created this space for corporations to go. And then Wired magazine came, and reframed the internet really as a economic, as a finance revolution. That's what they said, that we're going to go into this thing called the long boom, that thanks to digital technology, the surface area of the marketplace was going to become infinite, right? Because the web can go forever. And they said that because of these technologies, the market will grow exponentially, uninterrupted, forever. But once you're looking at technology less as a way to unleash the capabilities of the connected collective human imagination and more as a way to make money, then you're not looking to unleash creativity. What you're looking for is to increase probability, right? You're now betting on particular technologies. You're betting on a technological future. So you want the highest probability that the thing you're betting on is going to make 100x or 1000x. So we really reverse the polarity of technology. Instead of making technology for people to do hitherto unknown things, we started using technology on people to get them to do the most predictable things, right? So that's when all the techniques of behavioral finance and marketing and psychology started to be employed by technology to make websites sticky, to increase the number of eyeball hours you spent, and ultimately to modify human behavior to get us to do the statistically most probable actions, each of us, so sort of shaving off, kind of auto-tuning humanity to the notes that they want to see us play and leaving all that in-between stuff out.
It also seems to me, as you talk about that it created a notion of like infinite resources, or that there was no there's an infinite quality that somehow, like, at one point people forgot, like, oh wait, we're talking about the digital theoretical world, not the real world. But that's like, it's almost like that sort of concept bled into like this notion of, well, we could just do this forever. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as we're getting Bitcoins out of it, it really doesn't matter what we're doing in terms of the energy being used.
Right. And the problem is reality just can't scale, right? To the extent that digital can. Digital, right, is numbers. So you can get a number like Google on a computer, right? I don't know if you can calculate it yet, but you can think in those kinds of terms. But there's only so many atoms and humans and air on this little planet, right? So it doesn't ultimately match, right? The object of the game in the digital media environment is to scale. Talk about any business, even a charity, like, oh, I've got this new way for people to really, use permaculture farming in their community. Well, yeah, but does it scale? It's like,
right.
Does reality scale? No, it doesn't. Right.
Well, that's a problem with capitalism, right? Where it's like the entire sort of the only thing that's on the menu are things that can ultimately be profitable for the capitalist, as opposed to things on the menu that will be sort of beneficial for people. Those are, sometimes they intersect. And a lot of times I feel like the tech world sort of feels like there's a one-to-one relationship between those things, or there can be. But I mean, the reality is, like, I don't know, you could look across any type of, we've got medical innovations that would save, I think, a lot of lives and but it's just, it couldn't produce it in a way that would make money for somebody, and no one's willing to invest in it. And this is across the board.
Right. But if your underlying assumption is that whatever this is, civilization and technology can grow exponentially forever, then you have to start looking at people and the planet as something that, like, the first stage of a rocket that gets left behind when we move up. And guys like Musk and Thiel and Sam Bankman-Fried and these folks, they subscribe to this idea called effective altruism, which is that the hundreds of trillions of, post-human life forms that will one day be spread throughout the galaxy are worth more than the 8 billion mere larval humans that are on the planet today. And if we've got to sacrifice, the quality of life of these ones for that future, then, so be it. As long as the 20 billionaires, who are out there, don't have to suffer anything.
It's convenient to call that altruism, I'd say. I think it's quite convenient.
Effective, right?
Yeah, and effective. It's convenient for both.
Right.
so fundamentally, like, what is the fundamental problem that we face in this context, and what are, how do we, I guess, address it? I mean, after all that, like, that is like, what is the, I mean, billionaires bad? If it was up to me, I would institute a tax that would prevent them from becoming billionaires, and I would retroactively say, like, we're going to give you 6 more months of having fun, but then we're going to take that money back. And maybe get 3 months. I don't know. Whatever it is you want to do. If you want to send yourself up into a rocket to Mars, go for it. Just do it within 3 months, because we're taking the rest of the money.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, in some ways it does sound simplistic, but when you actually say it, billionaires bad, almost by definition, they are, right? Billionaires are living at a scale that is inappropriate to the reality in which we live. And then it engenders them thinking about our world at scale in a way that doesn't work. So that even now, as they take over philanthropy, when you want to come up with an idea of something that's going to help people, they want to know, we'll give you $100 million if this is a world-changing moonshot idea that operates at scale. Right? If it just saves a neighborhood or a particular lake or a particular indigenous group of people, well, that didn't scale, right? So they can only think in that way, which is sort of the danger, is we become a very brittle civilization if we think in that way too. So part of my job, I mean, the reason I wrote kind of a funny takedown black comedy about these guys is not that they will read it and change their ways, but that, the hundreds of millions of people, who might be aspiring to be one of them realize, oh, these guys are the fools, not the winners. They are the deep, deep losers. Their experience of life is just awful, and their solutions won't work, right? So then what can we do instead? And how much more fun would it be to invest in your community and meet real people and not feel the need to escape, all the time? It couldn't feel fun.
I am not convinced that we're not the losers. I mean, not in the sense of like, just in terms of like just the sheer equation of it. I mean, Bill Gates drops $1 billion into education and 10, 15 years ago, and derails public education in this country for at least 2 decades, because he thought he had an idea. And for him to expend that $1 billion and the commensurate money that chased after it is just like, it's like me, like, do I want a 2016 or a 2018 Subaru? Like, what, like, that's the big debate. And for him, $1 billion is like that. That seems to me like we all end up losing because that power is so concentrated.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? It's hard. He's also the biggest agricultural landowner in America right now, too, because he's got an idea about how farming should work, I guess, how food should work. Hopefully it's a good one.
Well, honestly, like, should we really just have one guy who just has the means to make this decision? I mean, should it be just one guy making these type of like broad decisions that will impact the trajectory of the earth? That's like what it seems to me. They just want, it's like they want to be, Zeus.
Yeah, they do. I mean, or literally. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg wants to be Augustus Caesar. And while we should be thankful he's modeling himself after Augustus rather than Caligula, it's still a Roman dictator, right? It's not.
That can always change, too, I guess. But he could wake up one morning.
Yeah. Well, who knows once Meta keeps losing money, right, on virtual reality or whatever garbage else.
Exactly. But we can diminish their power to some extent, though, by not buying all their stuff. By not living on Twitter, by not adopting their mindset as our own, it's pretty easy, like it's simple. Like if you got to hang a picture on the wall in your house, the first thing most of us are going to do is go to Home Depot and get a minimum viable product drill, right? That we're going to use once to drill that hole, stick it in the garage, and then it's never going to charge again, and we're going to throw it out, right? So we send kids into the mines to get their earth metals to make the things. We throw the thing in a toxic waste heap in Brazil, where some, other kids are going to be looking for a renewable product, when we could have gone to the neighbor and borrowed a drill. And that's all I'm asking people to just start borrowing and sharing with each other. It takes so much weight off this endless consumption. And when I brought that up, I just brought that up at a conference. Just borrow a drill from your neighbor. Someone got up and said, well, yeah, But what about the people who work at the drill company? What happens to them?
Right.
Right. And what happens to them was you realize, well, maybe they could work 4 or 3 days a week instead of 5.
Right.
What if we don't need, see, right now we don't have jobs in order to get work done. We have jobs in order to justify letting a person participate in the spoils of capitalism, right? So it's totally ass backwards, where we are serving this economic model rather than the other way around. So let's take a little bit of that programmer, hacker, open source ethos and say, oh, if everything is up for discussion, then why don't we challenge the fundamental rule set of corporate capitalism? That's the one thing all of these disruptive technologists never question, right? I'm going to disrupt this industry. I'm going to disrupt that one. But it's like, well, what about the operating system that you've accepted as a fact of nature, right? Which is that we live in a marketplace. We don't. We live in a commons. And how would you orchestrate that with your technology, buddy? And that's where it would get interesting.
This is a theme I think we've been hitting quite a bit as of late. We had Steve Paxton on a couple of weeks ago, who was saying, we produce 25% more food, and we throw away 25% of our food. Like, our production capacity can meet our needs. It's really just a question of how we decide to redistribute it. And this other thing is that the idea of like political economy. The economy exists as it is because we've made decisions that create it in this way, and we can make decisions that make it different.
Right. But the only way to get there is to have people understand a little bit of history. So they realize, oh, God didn't make central currency. Central currency was an innovation of 12th and 13th century monarchs looking to slow the rise of the middle class. So they took away their money systems and put this interest-based one. And now the economy has to grow every year so that we can pay back interest to the banks who make money off money. It's like, what? Right. So then every once in a while, someone comes along, like the guy who made Bitcoin, which really came out of the same ethos as Occupy, thinking, oh, we can create a way for people to, transact in an authenticated fashion. But capitalism is so strong. We look at, well, there's a way to exchange, but we could also bet on it. Right. So let's turn it into a new investment class. And I think we can, I have to believe we can, through education, through writing books, through talking about it, help engender an awareness that, oh, the rules of the economy, the rules of our society, especially in a digital environment, are up for discussion. We can redo this any way we want. It's the same ideas that we had in the late 80s and early 90s that, oh, we can program this to our liking rather than theirs. And if a generation of even engineers, of programmers can come up with a bit of liberal arts, a bit of humanities, and a bit of history, accompanying their knowledge of code, they might be able to build something very different and much more rapidly than we imagine.
Well, hope springs eternal. I mean, it's some fascinating ideas that folks can check out in Survival of the Richest. But I got to ask you while you're here about Twitter, just because this is really stunning, I think, what's happening with Twitter. Because on some level, it's like it's a case study for the one of the arguments you're making in your book. I mean, like, Elon Musk is really showing himself to have absolutely no idea what he's doing. And it's fascinating. And it's also like the idea that he could marshal $46 billion for doing that, or 44 or whatever it was, to do what he's doing. It really is stunning. I mean,
it pops a bubble in the myth of meritocracy. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying, like, maybe he's going to play off the whole Twitter blue thing like it was an April Fool's joke or something like that. But I mean, it really is fascinating how much he doesn't seem to understand the product that he has. How much, like, what is it that, because I think, like, he has been sort of this type of charlatan for quite some time. I mean, I'm one of those people who paid the $100 for the solar shingles years ago, and then they just sort of disappeared. And I'm like, wait, what? How many people are this? And I just saw a story from CNBC yesterday about, like, they haven't installed, they've installed, I don't know, 1,200 of these things over the past 5 years, and they were supposed to be doing thousands a day. But I mean, is this all just caught up to him or what?
Oh, God knows. It's probably all that money is going to Grimes alimony payments. I have no idea. But the moment that I thought that Twitter was over was actually the moment they went public. You know, I knew this guy, Evan Williams, who was one of the founders of Twitter. And the day that they went public, they put the founders of Twitter on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, and they put a number under each one of their faces of how much money they earned that day. And under Evan, it was like 4.3 billion. And I was thinking, this poor guy, how are investors going to make 100x or 1,000x of something that already he made 4.3 billion on? This is a 140 character messaging app, right? And within months, Wall Street was calling Twitter a failure because Twitter was only making $2 billion a year. Right? Imagine calling your grandma and saying, I made a 140 character messaging app. It makes $2 billion a year. Isn't that pretty good? Shouldn't you be able to stop there? But no, they can't, right? Because they took all this investment. So at that point, Twitter was no longer about 140 character messaging app. It wasn't even about the 280 character expansion. It was about, it had to be something else, that Twitter became the foothold for something else. So what Elon Musk is imagining is really Twitter becoming a bank, Twitter becoming a finance system, becoming the ultimate PayPal. That he was one of the original. Musk and Thiel were the founders. So I think he's thinking of it as, let's just get this thing sustainable enough so I can keep my user base or grow it to the point where I can start doing the real thing, some blockchain-y transaction yada yada with it. But it's the way digital always is, that the company, any product, anything you're doing in digital, you've basically sold it to the mob. It's no longer the thing. It's the storefront on the other thing, right? Mm-hmm. So Twitter is not a messaging app. Twitter is a gateway. It's a portal to some other suite of business or financial tools that Musk wants to that we don't
know about at this point. I mean, this is like what
he doesn't.
Cory Doctorow's concept of enshittification, right? Like we're in like a third stage enshittification at this point, where it's just sort of being used as a mechanism to get to somewhere else. But there's no there's no reason to believe that, I mean, that anybody's going to trust the platform anymore for that something else at this point.
How could you trust a platform that the second day he had this thing, he warned any advertiser who leaves this platform, I'm going to do thermonuclear Twitter war against you? That's a great sign. Don't touch the platform. If leaving it, could you imagine going into a relationship with someone who just did that to the person before? Right? It's like,
no, absolutely not.
And what's so interesting though about all of this, like just cesspool of bullshit, is that I saw that a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago, Facebook, or Meta, I should say, said, well, we're going to actually start out rolling out our own paid verification program. Because like, that's going so well for Twitter. But it speaks to what you're saying. It doesn't really matter about the functionality of it. They're trying to turn, now that we're in whatever stage we're in of like endless growth bumping up against the practical realities of these companies. It doesn't matter if the idea is good or bad or it's a total shit show. They want to monetize this, and they need to, because they have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders. And that's going to bring down the death of these platforms. It's going to cause the death of these platforms 100%.
Right. I mean, the one place where it's interesting what they're doing is in a world of deep fakes and AI manufactured identity, being able to verify who you are would be interesting. Like, you know, Clear. I always see these rich people going through the Clear line at the airport, and it's like, ooh, they figured something out, right? So the idea that there will be a way to verify, no, this is really, really me. Do I trust Twitter to do that? No. But whoever does figure that out, how to truly authenticate, how to watermark myself, you know, when I'm doing a video or a thing, would be an amazing thing. I don't think they can do it. I ultimately don't think a once removed symbol system can verify us. I think we live in a world where at some level you're going to have to trust other humans, some authority, the New York Times or the BBC or the government or the police, that human civilization is built finally on interpersonal human to human trust. And you build institutions out of trust. And the dream that you could do this automatically on a blockchain that you can substitute for all forms of human trust with technology, I think is a failed mission.
Well, that's what's fascinating about his whole idea of paying for verification, because that's not what verification is. Like the paying for verification is not, nobody's verified here, like in that situation.
Right.
It's the money. It's like you're buying a status symbol, as opposed to the value to the readers was just whether you like them or not, or whether, if Fox News is telling me something, I just want to know that it's Fox News. And because then I have all of my experience sort of like, I can apply that experience. I can apply the years of reading it or my knowledge outside of that. I mean, it doesn't matter whether I like it or not, or whether they're popular or not. It just allows me to use my personal experience and judgment. But if I don't know that it's Fox News, I just know that somebody paid, that it's just someone had a credit card. Like, there's no way. It's like he doesn't understand. Right. That was what the value of it is.
He does understand. It's just there. He's trying to take this bulk of people and turn it into something monetizable. I mean, that's the entire thing about Twitter Blue. But that's the reality, is he wants to monetize this and create a subscriber base and doesn't care if it looks dumb as hell.
Right. And there's the interesting thing is what they do is they back to history. They replace provenance. They replace history with something else. So we lose our story. We lose the whole thing that led to it. And the idea is, no, I can create authenticity in the moment, instantly, digital. There is no history. There is no past. There is no externalized harm. There is no nothing. There's only this now, right? This right now where I am king, and that's a dangerous world to live in.
Douglas Rushkoff, a professor of media studies at Queens College, author of Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. We'll put a link to that at majority.fm and on the YouTube and podcast descriptions. Real pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for what you do.
Thanks. All right, we got to take a quick break, and we will head into the second half of the program.
Whoa.
Wherein we will read your IMs. We will take some phone calls. We will play some clips. Don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And check out Seder's Seeds, SEDRSSEEDS.com if you want to start growing some stuff. It's fun. I mean, I'm the type of person right now on my windowsill. I got a mango pit in dirt. I've got basil plants. I've got potatoes with the toothpicks.
Yeah. You just enjoy that.
I enjoy it. I like it.
Yeah.
But check it out. And maybe we'll do a thing where we're tracking, progress of people's little plants.
I agree.
Also,
sounds good.
Don't forget, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you get the fun half. And you can IM the show via the app, et cetera, et cetera. Emma.
Yes.
It's Monday.
Yes, it is.
It's ESVN Day.
Yes, it is. And we have a big discussion ahead of us about the massive controversy and just great play for women's basketball in the LSU Iowa game. This is a big moment for the sport. I also want to talk about some headlines for baseball season starting, and Jeff Bezos twisting arms within the NFL circles to get flex scheduling for Thursday Night Football, which is a disaster for player safety and also for ticket buyers, people who want to see games in person. YouTube.com/ESVN show at 4 p.m. today. And Matt Leck, who I don't even remember what he looks like anymore. He has been gone to the grand jury for, what is it now, a week and a half?
Yeah,
he's going to be gone for another like 3 weeks.
Yeah, he hasn't been back since I think Thursday, March 23rd was his last show in studio.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So he's gonna be out a month.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
but he gets off work for Left Reckoning.
Yeah, it looks
I mean,
like
gets off-
it looks like Alex Salmon was on last week, writer at Slate, youtube.com/Left Reckoning, patreon.com/Left Reckoning if you want to get the post game.
And there's like an urgency to his tweeting now.
Oh,
like he's trying to get his fix because he can't because he's spending all day. Like
I did know.
He's got to shoot him off.
You noticing that? He's getting more aggressive on Twitter.
Yeah. I think he just he doesn't have an outlet here every day. So there you go.
Chris Burdick says, I can't imagine what your thoughts raced through your head when your friend told you need to sex your plants. I didn't know. I mean, I tried to look at it, like to see, like, and supposedly, like, they tell you it looks like. I'm not good at that.
Yeah. All right.
646-257-39
20.
20. Between the 101 and 5 just wrote, Leck is indicating Trump. All right, we'll see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them, just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We're back. Oh.
Yes.
Kowalski. Howdy, I'm Majority Report. Did you open them gifts yet?
We did.
I did.
Well, I didn't get anything extra except for a nice mug, which